joining?
He's right there.
Oh, there he is. My bad. Thank you.
I'm here.
He's the guy at the beach.
Here's the guy at the beach. Well, welcome everybody to our. Are we YouTube live?
We are streaming now.
You give me the countdown. 4.
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
Welcome everybody to this week's installment of our Finance and Facilities Committee. I'm sure to be as exciting as the other ones. Peter, do you want to just launch into our agenda? Does anyone have any problems with that?
So the purpose tonight is to meet our, well, first to admit Susan. First really is to meet Steve Sylvester, our facilities director.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, everyone.
Know him or seen him around. He's been with the district for 10 years. I think primarily as custodial supervisor for the last 9 years. And then this year, he's officially the interim facilities director because we've never had a facilities director in my tenure here. It's always been a transportation and facilities director. And so we've divided that role up, and Steve is facilities, buildings and grounds. It's everything to do with operations with the buildings and grounds. Before this, he spent about 5 years, I think, with our RSU 40 as the director of facilities and grounds. He was a safety officer. He was inventory control. He was a HERA management, managed summer projects. And for the 15 years before that, he was with Bank of America MBNA, beginning with, I guess, first security, but then working with their fleet, and then down at the airport, and then facilities coordinator for his last 5 years there. So he's got quite the background in facilities, and I think he was a great choice for me. He was kind of an easy choice to take over this department. He's been kind of visioning this with me and Scott and John for the last 5 years. He's taken a ragtag group of custodians with a lot of quirks and developed that into a team of really high-performing individuals for the most part that John and I rarely ever hear about anymore, like we did for the first 4 or 5 years that we were here. It's just been, he's really kind of developed it into kind of hiring and training quality staff, and he and I have talked a lot about his role being kind of the one to really give everybody who works for him the tools to be successful. And I think he's really done that. I think we have an outstanding staff, and I think that in this next round of negotiations, when we actually develop this next tier of building and grounds 1, 2, and 3 type positions like we do with ed techs, we'll be able to hire some even more skilled staff, maybe even those skilled with electricians and plumbers. So I will let him start, kind of give you the overview of where he's going, and then I'll just kind of I'll be support person for him, and John
That'd
can
be good.
just jump in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that'll be good, Pete, if you can do that.
we'll do that,
So-
and I will. So he's got a little bit of a PowerPoint kind of somewhere I have here. There it is. That I will put up on the screen if it's okay. And share the screen first. All right. And let me get Susan back in here. Can you see the screen?
I can see it.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, I can see it.
Well, Pete and I have been working a long time, like you said, on building and grounds and developing a plan on how to do things better in the district. And after a lot of discussion and thinking on it, I thought that the best way to do that for us was to combine the two departments. We had a separate maintenance department and separate custodial department. And I thought that combining the two into one and moving the existing positions from maintenance into our buildings and make that their home base, their building, so that they're there most of the time. That being said, there are also the positions that are, I like to refer to them as hybrid. They do a lot of different things. They still will get outside and do snow removal. They'll do trimming. They'll do, anything on the outside, litter control and things like that. But when there's nothing that needs to be done outside, they are assisting on the inside. So that really helped us a lot with extra cleaning that needs to be done in the buildings, especially during lunch times. They also are responsible for work orders in each of those buildings. The goal there was to not have to wait for work orders to get generated by either teachers and staff and then get through and then get back to the person. My goal was that they would be in the building, they would see what was going on every day of the week, and they would take care of the things and then basically do the work and then fill out a work order, so that it was way more efficient. We've been doing this for a while. I've got 3 folks that are doing that role right now, and it's a learning curve, but I think overall we've done very well at that aspect. But coming into the spring season, there's going to be a whole new ball game as far as a lot more to do outside. We've got sports fields that are going to be taking place and need prepping. We're going to be doing some of our own grounds as far as cutting grass and trimming. We're going to be doing some of that. So it's going to be a bigger of a balancing act coming right up. So as far as the vision for this that Pete and I talked about, that was the baseline, and we've moved forward on it. And I think going forward from here is to build on that base, is to hire the right people and hire people that have skills and that can do multiple things that can be called upon at any time. I'd like to just take a second and tell you that the crew that we have now, this crew always comes through for us. We've been asked to do a lot of stuff, and I have not come against any kind of incident that we failed. We've always pulled through whatever it takes, and they're a great crew. They really are. We're lucky to have such a crew that cares about their building, cares about the job they do, and care about the students, the staff. Yeah, we've got a few niches here and there, but for a whole, they've really done a great job. I can't say enough about them, and I'm hoping that we can keep going on that same wavelength. So going forward, as far as our vision, as far as the staffing and what we need, we do need to make some investments in things, some equipment and people mostly. But that's something to work towards down the road. I must say that as far as the custodial side, where I've been mostly doing that, I got to say that Pete and John have been very very receptive to ideas about, we've gone with the idea of getting the staff the equipment that they need to make the job not only easier on them, but more efficient, as far as, automatic floor scrubbers and microfiber materials, and just they've been instrumental on going along. So the interior equipment, we're in pretty good shape, other than a couple of breakdowns here and there. But like I said, Pete and John have been great at seeing that vision and seeing that that's what we need to keep our schools up to where they should be. Anything you can add, Pete?
Well, if I could interject,
Sure.
in much the same way that the bus driver is the first person that a student or a parent sees every day, someone coming to our buildings, that's the first thing they see is how they're maintained on the outside. And so it's really important that we present a really good face to the public. And I really like hearing from you that this is an important thing for your department. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's important. The outside first impressions. I got to say, our high school has come around tremendously. I mean, with the vision that John and Pete had for the expansion and everything, and just pulled it all together, and to maintain that to a high standard, I'll put that high school up against any in the state. I mean, I see things on TV, like on news stories, and they have stories at schools and stuff, and we always look at the hallways, how neat and clean it is. But I want to tell you, our high school, as well as our other schools, I'm not putting them down, but particularly the high school with the expansion and the additions, that building is top notch. It really is. The other buildings are as good. We're working with staff and to get what they need over there, and get some training on some areas that need more. But in a whole, boy, I tell you, it's from 10 years ago, we are looking really good and efficient. And the heating and the ventilation important this year is as good as any buildings in the state. I mean, we've done very well. And we continue to upgrade. Thomaston Grammar is a good example of upgrading. There was always good ventilation in there, but we found ways that we could make it better. So we've replaced some unit vent fans on the roof that would increase the ventilation even more. So things like that we just continuing to improve and updating.
Well, and to Gerald's point, we did manage to make sure that our custodians and all of our, but custodians in particular, have uniforms, have the ability to wear, logoed shirts and coats, because we believe that was really important, that they be recognized as part of the school, because they're sometimes the first people that parents and visitors see in a school and ask questions of.
Right.
We've some other things with staff. Steve said we bought equipment we've invested in equipment. The board has invested in equipment to make our staff more efficient, so they can get more done in the same amount of time. We've also worked with our staff, and we've kind of set the expectation that this is not a Monday through Friday job. So Steve has the flexibility of when he needs to move staff to weekends without just adding hours. We still keep them in the 40-hour range because they're all full-time staff. But if there's an event going on at the high school, we don't need to offer overtime at time and a half to man that. We have staff that are willing to adjust their schedules. We've set that expectation. That's taken us a lot of years to do that. So I think that there's a lot more things that we've been doing in this department, because we have cut staff as a whole, not just because we've lost buildings, but we have cut our buildings and grounds staff, on a per student basis over the years. Not in the last 3 years, because we did a bunch when we first started the Schools of the Future project. We kind of made cuts in anticipation of not needing, and we didn't make cuts. We used retirement, but we in anticipation of having more efficient staff, which we've been able to maintain. But they've also, they've stepped up during this past year like no one has. It's been really incredible to see our buildings go through this, because every time there's a case or a contact, we have to, the staff has to go in and clean even extra for everybody. But I haven't heard a peep at it. I haven't heard a complaint from anybody.
And I know Pete and I have talked for a number of years about getting them uniforms. And I'm sure Doug would be the first to say that it kind of develops an esprit de corps that I think is really important. But it's also, it gives any visitor to the buildings, this is a person that obviously works here. And they can go to them for any kind of need. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
I want to lean in on the importance of the building and grounds for morale. I do, because of my profession, Steve, I focus a lot on psychology and mental health and how people feel about things. And for staff and students and even the public, when you live in, you go to school in, you work in a very special building for all the reasons that we know, they feel better about where they are and what they're doing. So I really feel great about what you guys are doing. And I just want to continue on that message and on that theme is that to keep going in the sense of beautifying what we have. I agree with you on the high school. What an amazing turnaround the high school has become in building and grounds. And would like to see that continue in terms of the installation of more trees and shrubs and flowers and beds and everything throughout our school district, because it just creates a really great atmosphere in everything that we're doing. And that you guys and your entire staff should know how important you are to that experience that our staff and students have. It is so important that they go into these buildings every day like, wow, this is a special place. Because down deep, they're thinking, well, I must be kind of special if I'm going to such a special place. So I'm always going to say that to you every single year. I'm around for a long time, but I love what you're doing. And when I keep helping you do what you're doing and keep literally grow more things outside and grow our buildings and grounds to what they can be forever.
Thank you. They've done a great job. No, I'm hoping that when we move to our next phase, our next vision part is to even, like Pete said, get the right people and hopefully get the 1, 2s, and 3s. What I feel that would help us a great deal is to have team leaders in each building and have them handle, the day-to-day stuff and the communications between, basically, we've got two shifts, the daytime and then the evening shift that does the majority of the cleaning. And I think that those folks would be instrumental in taking us to the new level of just the communication and what's going on day to day with these folks. And Pete and I have talked a lot about that, and we're hoping that pretty soon we can hopefully implement some of that coming in. So lead people would be a great asset to us in each building.
So as we kind of go into more of this, I want to just, we're really trying to keep our lanes really clear. We have a general fund lane and we have a grant funded lane. And, this is a budget meeting. This is a budget discussion, but you're going to see some crossover in this. Just recognize that, we're not asking for any, substantial, we're asking for a status quo budget number in facilities, but we may use grant funding to help us accomplish some of these goals. So we may, move a staff member to grant funding in order to purchase equipment, if that makes sense financially, if we can sustain that over the next 3 or 4 years. So just keep that in mind, that this is, even though this presentation is going to cross over those lanes, it's going to do so in a way that we leverage our grant funds to accomplish some of these goals.
Actually, can I
Good.
jump in there, Pete?
Yep.
Can you walk me through that a little bit more? Because I'm trying to think about it from a couple of different perspectives. One is that I got the budget that you sent over yesterday, and we had talked about having the COVID budget as well. So I don't think I see that, but I also haven't had a chance to go through it, so I may be missing it. So I'm not really sure. I am just not visually seeing sort of some of those differences. But I'm
So-
also wondering, it just seems to me like, how are we tracking that? I know you're tracking it. I'm thinking more on a board level, is how do we track that? And it seems like we're still maintaining the same budget instead of taking some of those efficiencies. And I'm not really sure why we're doing that. So those are like those are like 3 different directions I'm sending you in, but I think you can probably pull them together.
I'll do my best. So we're not going to talk about the COVID budget until the next workshop. So we're still, Stephanie, John, and I have had a couple conversations, in-depth conversations, kind of put together the larger framework of where this money will, where we think this money will be spent in terms of, student support, staff support, facility support. And so with that in mind, including the summer programming was a big topic. Curriculum was a big topic. The next step, we've set up meetings with every single principal and every single director over the next 2 weeks to make sure that we incorporate everybody's thoughts into how this money could be most useful for the district. Because we have 3 years to spend it now. This ESSER 3 money has until September of 2024. So actually into fiscal 25. So part of a 4th year, we have some ability to obligate funds. But we're not really going to know that or give that to the board and start discussing that until the workshop in April. So 3 weeks from now, or 2.5 weeks from now. Things that, I think you've heard that we can't spend this money on money that we budgeted. So in some cases, we may have to pull something out of a budget in order to fund it with ESSER money. We know we're going to need extra staff for a couple of years in building and grounds for cleaning and disinfecting. I think that's here to stay. So I think it's going to make sense at some point when we kind of go through this to propose at least an extra position and maybe moving one of our current positions into the ESSER funds for a couple of years. Because it may be easier to move an individual than it would be to move a lease payment on a piece of equipment that we're trying to incorporate into the long-term strategy in order to reduce our outside contracting and to also make our just staff more efficient. So so there's going to be a blending of these budgets a little bit in terms of our strategic thinking. But that's like the most simple thing is we might move a position from the general fund into ESSER funds and replace that money with a different expenditure.
So when I try to get a handle on what we're doing in this budget, and I'm looking at the by adopted and working by article. So it looks like the department's up 9%. So that includes what? And then the extra position would be something that would be considered separately in COVID. Am I sort of tracking all that correctly?
Right, so you see part of that increase, not just the staff increase, but you'd see increases in the maintenance agreements. In the insurance is a major part of the facilities budget. And then there is a $143,000 capital improvement line in that part of the budget. So that's going to be most of it. I think if you take some of that out, you won't see the increases.
And I assume we'll talk about that. I feel like some of my questions may be better for after I've heard the presentation, so I won't follow up on that.
All right, Steve, it's all yours.
I'm opened up for questions. Well, yeah, we can talk,
I have
touched on it a little bit. Go ahead.
I have a question. So I can see the first slide, but I haven't seen any of the others in the deck, and I just wondered, is that because they're coming later, or
What slide do you see?
it just says building and ground, so I can see the other slides, but I can't read them.
Then the wrong screen's being displayed. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
All right, let me try to share the right screen. Better?
There we go. Thank you.
yes,
Right.
that works. Thank you.
Yeah, see, I got it on all three of my screens, a different part of the slide presentation.
Yeah. Well, we touched on some of this, John, the staff and vision. And my vision is, again, team leaders in the particular schools, the larger schools, high school, middle school, basically. And Pete just talked about with the COVID funds about additional staff. With the extra cleaning that we've done and are going to do, it's going to be a lot on our plate to do, especially at lunch times. Lunches are a big thing for us, as far as because either they have two cafeterias going at the same time, or kids are eating in different areas. I know, like at the high school, when it's bad weather, they're eating up in the balcony. So, that's an area that doesn't generally get cleaned, but on those days we have to, and then disinfect. So there's a lot of things that tie into the care during this pandemic, and even afterwards. I don't, like Pete said, I don't think it's going away very, very soon, as far as the extra cleaning that we do. The other thing with the staffing, again, touching on hiring people that have abilities other than just the baseline, and that's just a matter of getting the right people and talking to them and making good choices on who we get into those positions. Yeah, and it's worked. I mean, we've got some folks that are in there now that can do an array of different things. One thing, to have somebody that has a plumbing license, say that would be a huge thing for us. But it would be expensive to do, because that's a skilled trade, and you got to be licensed, and but that would be something that ideally, if we could find a retired plumber that wanted to work and just do a little bit of plumbing, that would be great. But that's the direction and the vision of trying to bring this building and grounds all together, as far as getting our schools and keeping our schools at a high level that we want to do. I also wanted to touch base on, back to the disinfectant, that the staff, John and Pete agreed, we purchased these sprayers that have static electricity, that when you spray the disinfectant, that they cling on everything. So it's fast, it's easy, and it's very efficient. It's a hospital grade disinfectant that we're using, and you can do a classroom in just a few minutes, and everything is covered. Everything is disinfected, and that's been a great tool for us. And again, that goes back to Pete and John and going along with, seeing that was a great tool for us to use. So I just do that, and I thought of that top of my head. So you got another screen, Pete? You running that?
Yeah. So part of this was to, the hiring was to, start reducing our dependence on outside contractors. So I think that's an
Yes.
expensive part of our budget. We've always been out. We've done a lot of outsourcing when we first got here, and we've been trying for years now to figure out how do we stop that reliance and use the staff that we have, invest in them. It's cheaper, especially when you're already paying benefits, which is a huge part of this staff's total compensation. Even paying time and a half is sometimes less expensive than it is to hire a new staff member or contract somebody else. So we're trying to really make sure that we can be more efficient and effective with budget dollars, and part of that is going to be investing in staff and equipment.
Right. I see if we were contracting out to have all our grass cut every year, and you look at what it's going to cost us, and it's almost the cost of what a full-time employee would be. And then on the time when the mowing is done, then we have that person to do other things. So it's like a win-win. We get away from the contracting, we get the job done, we get it done. I say better, because we have control of who's doing it, and it's our, we're controlling a lot more. But on the same token, you got to have the equipment to do it. So that's where a capital investment has, you have to be committed to doing that. But I believe it would pay for itself over time, as far as getting the right equipment and the right people to do it, which goes into this slide about equipment and supplies. Just some things that Pete and I have talked about multi-use vehicles. The first one there, that utility vehicle, one that could be used in our sports fields, because we do a lot of sports fields prep, and what we have right now is pretty tired. Every year we patch them together, and we buy batteries, and we tires, and it's just they're old and they're wore out basically, and it's an investment to do it. But instead of just having one vehicle that does one job, if you get one of these type vehicles that can do several different jobs at different locations, just take the South School campus where the football field and the baseball fields are right there. It could be ideal for taking care of the sports fields in that time of the season. In the wintertime, it can be used to take care of the snow removal on that campus, and it'd be right there. So the multi-use vehicles, I believe, are really we should focus on. Even, I talked to Pete a lot about work trucks, and we just had a discussion the other day about a dump truck instead of just a regular pickup. A dump truck has a lot more versatility, maybe a little bit more than just a regular pickup, but not a whole bunch more. But the versatility would be very good for us. You can put a snowplow on it, you could put a sander in it, you got debris you could put in it and take to the dump, and it's just endless. So this just really just a couple of bullets here that say that's the type of equipment that we would be looking for as far as a capital investment down the road. So
we have a lot
those vehicles in our budget proposal in front of us.
No, not individually.
no,
I mean, but are they included in our numbers here?
So there we have, there is money, I believe, for equipment, and that would be for a lease payment on equipment. So yes, so we've got to figure out what that would actually buy.
Okay.
But it would be probably, $100,000 worth of equipment would be a $25,000 lease payment per year for 4 years. Some of these things some of these things can be done with COVID money. We have bought a 3/4 ton snow plow already. That was allowable to keep our outside clear in the winter. We may be able to get another one of those. But there's nothing new in here. We've always held an equipment line in the capital budget or in the facilities budget. We don't always spend it. We rarely spend it, but we added it a couple of years ago.
Pete, what line number is that?
I'd have to look.
And if we rarely spend it, why don't we have that money available to fund some of this?
We don't roll it over and save it. We don't put it into a capital reserve fund like I'd like to. And that's kind of the plan going forward, is to actually budget some of that money for capital reserve so we can do that.
And Steve, do you feel like because this is a discussion we've had in the past couple of years, hold on. There. The past couple of years of pulling and doing some of the landscaping in-house. The snow plowing is new to me, but I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you have a sense for how much we would save on that versus how much our costs would increase in staffing? Is it like a wash, or can some of that money be used for equipment and things like that?
I think once we get established, Chelsea, we can, once the investment in it kind of pays for itself, I think it's a better value for us to have it done in-house. Pete would be better answer the questions about how much, but just I'm going to say quality or the care that we could give, because we are our own people. It's the same idea as the custodians inside the building, that the ones that do a great job for us are the ones that really care about what's going on in the buildings and what they do for a job. So
it also is more flexible because we have a lot of staff
right,
who would like to do more
right.
landscaping things, and it gives you people
the flexibility is huge, because when let's face it, in August you're going to cut grass every other week when it's, especially when it's dry. So but you still have that person, and that person can be utilized for coverage. I'm not going to sugarcoat. This department is like all the other departments. We have people that get sick. We have people that for whatever reason aren't in, and we try to keep our level of people at the baseline that we have. But it doesn't take too many incidents that if I have 2 or 3 people out in one night, say that's a big cut. That some things wouldn't get done but we're lucky because we have a real good crew that they know how to do the stuff that really needs to be done, and then the stuff that could wait till the next night. We make it happen. We make it work. But we are, this past week I've had a lot of folks out ill, and it's just, we don't have the backup that these positions would utilize, because that, talk about the hybrid positions, you got the extra person during the day, and that person is a great backup. So you got 2 people, say at the high school, and the high school daytime person is sick. Okay. A hybrid person, now you're not going to do work orders. You're not going outside. You are the daytime person. We have an automatic backup right there. With I'll just call him an exterior grounds person, when there's no groundsman, we can utilize those people elsewhere, either doing work orders or sports fields or inside the buildings to help us out when it's needed. So
maybe that's a good transition to another question I had, which was looking through the lines. It's a little hard to tell because I don't have the cross sections yet. But it seemed like the subline was actually up a lot this year. And so I was wondering if you can comment on that, because it sounds like you are looking for these efficiencies, but at the same time, the subline is up. So I'm not sure how to read that.
Can I just jump in and say that I'm having a hard time going back and forth between the presentation and talking about the budget in detail? Is there any way that we could finish the presentation and go back to Chelsea's question and all those kind of questions? Would that work?
Works okay for me, Lauren.
Is that okay, Chelsea?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Okay.
Go to the next slide.
I don't think there's maybe one more, but I think we've touched on all of the capital improvements. These are things that really, every district has these things. These are no more than big repairs. Eventually, roofs need to be replaced. Siding and windows and big ticket items need to be upgraded and replaced. That's another capital dollar amount that we just have to plan for. I mean, we can't let our buildings go. We're at such a good spot right now that to keep going on the way we're going, we'll be good for a lot of years. But we just, things do come up. I mean, we've got some South School needs a lot of work. I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done at South School. There's a lot of trim that's bad. Luckily we've replaced some windows with some COVID funds, which has been great, which I tied in some of the trim on the cafeteria at that project that was good. But those things are out there. We just need to be aware that they're there, and we need to, plan for it. And roofs are big. And Pete and I talked a lot about, do we really need to do it on a particular year, or, it's a gamble. I mean, you wait. If you wait and you guess wrong and you start getting leaks, it compounds the problem. But, we're doing okay. I mean, at the moment, but, some folks like to say that, oh, you're in bad shape. You got to do it now. Well, maybe not, but it is something out there that needs to be on our radar for as far as big ticket items, I'll call them. Roofs are big.
Yeah, these sort of items are always the ones that get delayed as part of cost savings, and you end up just spending more in the end.
Right.
And I would add that the roof of the McLean School is blowing off with every breeze. I was surprised at how many shingles are missing when I looked at it today. And so that's definitely another need. How bad of shape is the cementitious siding at South School? I mean, I know that there's been some problems over the years there with it.
Yeah, there are spots, Gerald, that are in worse shape than others. On the back side, with the connector between the two buildings, is in dire need of some help soon, very soon. There are other areas that we're good for a while. I mean, it's where the water and the wind hit it. It really raised havoc with it, and that's like the trim. When that building was put up, they used that certain type of trim that they called it finger joint trim. Everybody used it back in the day, and it turned out it was not a great product, and it's bad.
So can I ask you about COVID-4 money and finishing the high school windows? Is there any chance?
I think Pete and I talked about that, going the next phase of windows, Pete, right?
That's on the list that we're talking about. So
Yeah.
it's $1 million budget item.
But do the regulations allow for it, do you think, or you're not sure?
Yes, I think they could.
Windows, definitely. Yeah.
The money is quite flexible. And I guess what I understood from what I learned today is that there may be some more restrictions on ESSER 3 money when it comes to facilities. But remember, we still have ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. So that's going to be part of the strategic piece of this, is how we fund these projects with the right money, because each has different restrictions and each one has a different time frame.
Yep. Right.
So
Right.
Yeah.
But we do, so just to finish up on the capital side of this thing, Gerald's right. These are things that we defer as school boards and as administrators all the time. But some of these things, like the trim, that's been John's pet peeve for years now over at the middle school, or the former middle school, the current, what we call New South, or the new side of South School.
I'm waiting to jump. I'm waiting for my turn to jump on this one.
And the other thing that we do is we have when it comes to roofs, these are $100,000 roof projects.
Yeah.
And in the past, they get deferred, and all of a sudden, then like we did in 2004, just before I got here, you go out, you go to bond for $500,000 to fix them all, and $500,000 doesn't go very far. So, but we're also trying to balance these needs that we know about with the salespeople that are telling us that we have these needs.
Right.
And so it's not always a bad thing to defer if you do it in a way that is informed. And that's what I think we spend a lot of time kind of just talking about it and reviewing it. And is this a need? Do we, we're finding ourselves going out for second opinions a lot more. Because just because somebody's been doing your roofs for 20 years doesn't mean that they're not doing it because they like us. They're doing it because of the paycheck. Yeah. And we pay whatever is $20,000-$30,000 a year just for the right to have them inspect us every year, and then they charge us to fix them. There's a lot of rackets when it comes to public schools, I'm finding.
I'm gonna jump in and just say that, one of my goals right now is to make a graceful exit from the McLean building, and we've talked about that. And then I would really like to turn our attention to a couple things. One, Lauren already mentioned, which is completing the window project at the high school, but South School really needs a refresh on the exterior. I've walked around it. Steve's looked at it. Pete's looked at it. I've got a background in construction as well. And the trim on that building and the siding on that building and more of the windows in that building definitely need a refresh. So we're going to have to evaluate that building, but it's the one that in my opinion right now is really the most needy facility that we have. It's South School. And it's right in the heart of Rockland. It should be one of our showpiece schools, and we do need to pay some attention to that. So you're going to hear more about that from me.
And that was completed in 2004?
I believe that's correct. I'm not entirely certain of the date, but as Steve pointed out,
97, I thought it was.
97?
I was the first 8th grade class there.
Oh, there you go.
So
You want to date yourself?
no problem with that.
As Steve pointed out, the trim that they used on that facility is that old finger joint pine, which are really short pieces of pine put together. There's no grain in it. It's big, wide, quick growth pine, and it just rots. I mean, it is absolutely worthless.
Yeah.
So we need to do a total evaluation on the exterior of that building, and that's in the works for me anyway. I'm gonna be pushing for that.
In terms of rot, it sounds like it's sooner than later, right? Because we all know that rot is just so expensive.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, once the water gets in and gets in the insulation, you're leading a lot more problems. So it looks to me that half of the increase is more than half, is this $143,000 line. What is that, Pete?
So that really is addressing the potential capital needs. So, again, we'll work hard at not spending it if we don't have to.
Okay.
And if we don't spend it, we would put it aside and we'd actually roll it into a capital and start refunding our capital reserve account, which then every year, as you remember, that money gets kind of authorized by the voters to spend on capital projects. So we don't have to roll one-time expenditures, big expenditures into the budget where they get redlined. So the idea is that we don't want to be stuck without some kind of reserve for some of these needs that we see are coming. We haven't made the decision on whether we can defer the roof. That's, I think the estimate is about $104,000 or so on the one roof. Steve's been up there, looked at it. He doesn't see any issues with the roof. It hasn't given us any leaks. So we have another individual, I think, hopefully coming to give us a second opinion on that one. But either way, we know we're going to have that expense. So this is beginning to actually put a line item, a contingency line item that can be spent in an emergency during that year until we actually get the capital reserve fund fully funded back up to where it was, which is probably back to where, I'm not sure what we'll be comfortable with, $500,000 or more. But I think we just, that'll become more apparent as Steve kind of gets out of COVID mode and into the capital planning and kind of, puts these 6 buildings on a budget, timeline as to what needs to be replaced. We have new furnaces in almost all the buildings. We have backup boilers in all the buildings. So that's not going to be a short-term need, but there's definitely going to be other needs that we have, including the outside, landscaping, which because of some of our landscaping kind of collapsing, we're getting water damage down to the foundation. So some of those things have to be done to prevent, like we get the wood, we're getting rot in the foundation, in some schools where the ground just kind of gets depressed from the water coming off the roof. The line item is it's line 170 in the budget by department on page 10 of 64.
Wait, which report number?
It's 72567. It's the first budget of the two.
72567. Okay, and you said line 170?
170. There's a $20,000 equipment line.
So the 140,000 that we're talking about is that included there? It's a $20,000 line in my budget.
That's the equipment line that you asked about.
Right, I thought you said it was 15.
I said it was 25. I was wrong either way.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so is that included? That's separate though from the contingency.
Correct.
Okay, so what we have here then is about $160,000 plus presumably some equipment. So the 160,000 is for capital improvement only. Is that what we're thinking? Or sorry, 140, and the equipment is for like the trucks and the plows.
For a lease payment.
Okay, for a lease payment.
If we decide to put together a package of mowers or whatever we eventually decide that we need, bid it out and then go to do a lease, 4 or 5 year lease, depending on the lifespan of those.
So Steve, I have a couple of questions that are related to this topic. So we'll come back to my sub question in a long time. So we've been talking in the committee level about a facilities audit. And I'm wondering what your thoughts about a facilities audit are, how that would be different from your standard practices of sort of monitoring buildings and setting out replacement plans and things like that. But then I'm also curious, in terms of how much money do you think we should be spending to keep up with capital improvement? are we looking at like $150,000 every year is what we should be doing? Are we looking at more, at less?
I would think at least that for like 5 years, then we get kind of caught up. Mostly the buildings, like John said, the South School is our biggest need. I'm McLean, but hopefully we're moving out of there soon. But if we can get South School, have it a makeover done there. The other buildings are, we've done some good things in all of the other buildings. The middle school, we've taken advantage of the COVID relief funds, doing windows, and we actually, you probably noticed a siding that isn't back on the middle school addition over there, but it's because of trying to get siding that match. But anyway, we've done a lot in our buildings. I would think, like Pete was talking about, the roofs and the bigger items within, 150 or even 200 for the next 5 years. Or Pete's probably much more better at with those kinds of formulas, but at least that, Chelsea, I would think. And as far as an audit goes, is that you're talking about just listing out what we have and what we think we need?
And thinking about maintenance plans, we've been talking about that aspect of it, and then the space use aspect of it, which I know would not be your department. So I'm talking more about like having, for instance, here's the roof, here's when here's the maintenance that we're going to do every year, every 5 years. Here's when we need to replace it, and actually like budgeting for those costs.
Yeah. Well, actually, I got a program, not a program, but something that I've just made up. It's a capital improvement, 5-year capital improvement plan that I'm keeping track of what our needs are and what's the most needy, the priority is. And once, my plan was to do the number ones, do the priority ones in 1 year, and then everything that is a 2, I move to the ones, and just as an ongoing yearly thing. And if we can come to a dollar amount, we can scale it down to, and just really critique it on what we can spend and what is the priority. There are a lot of priorities, there's no question, but there are things that are near the bottom that, things are going to wear out. Things are, elevators, they're going to be, that's a big ticket item. Just maintaining elevators is huge. Security systems, fire horns, things like that eventually will need to be replaced and updated. And so that's kind of the, the 4 and 5 year, or even further, 6, 7 year down the road. And it just keeps moving forward as we go, as we get things done. So
I'm really glad to hear it seems like we're starting to do this, because I agree with what everyone has said. It's not realistic to sit there and say, well, now we need to pay $100,000 out of pocket. We need to have that money, and it needs to be divided up over the course of years. Because finger jointing, et cetera, are all major problems.
yeah.
Okay, I will let some other people ask questions, and then I'll come back with my other ones.
I will just jump in for a second and say that what Steve is doing with his crew too is he's got crew trying to tackle some of these bigger projects that we haven't touched for a while, like the finger jointing. I think I probably held him back more than he's wanted to go at these things, because I'm just scared as to what he's going to find. And I don't want to have to go hire somebody right now.
The other aspect of that too, Pete, is the height of South School. We need to stay within the safety guidelines. If we're going to be that high off the ground, we need to rent equipment, lifts, or whatever we need. If we're going to do it ourselves, I don't know if it makes sense for us to do it with the extra cost of having the equipment we need to get up there and do the job right. And like Pete says, we don't know what we're going to find when we get in there, and it could turn into a real problem real quick. I did plan on doing a small section out back that's low to the ground, and just kind of the worst area where Gerald was talking about out back of the connector, and just take that off. And I've got people that can definitely do the job. I have no question about that. It's what we'll find. If we go to the worst place and we tear it out and we find whatever we find back there, we can almost bet that we're going to find it up on the second story. But to get up there is going to be, it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be a dangerous job. I mean, you get up on a lift that's 2 stories off the ground. That's
You talking about siding or roof? You're talking about siding, right?
siding and trim mostly.
And trim.
For 'em. The
Okay.
trim is super bad in places. So if you take
Yeah,
the
you
trim
mean
off,
rot. You mean rotting.
is the rafters, the tip of the rafters, are they rotten too? You know, that's the danger. If it's
Mm.
Yeah,
the roof rafters, you've got a huge problem going on.
I had a problem where we pulled the insulation out. So and then the backside of your sheetrock's all black with mold.
Right.
And
I
it's
mean,
just,
you get that. And another hidden problem at Cell School in some areas, that the rot we talked about on the siding, that penetrates inside. You get that on wet days, you get that smell, and you can smell musty, and it's not good. So
No.
That is a
that's on the
ventilation
side.
issue and a danger. And during COVID, we should be able to pay for it because that's air quality.
It is air quality. Right?
well, it's not a ventilation issue, it's a mold issue, but yes.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's not
Ventilation
ventilation,
will
but it's
help.
ventilating through the school.
I'm with Kelsey on this one. I'll tie that one together.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Pete.
no, I think that's a legitimate argument. Because
I mean,
no, asthma, it exacerbates.
Yeah, that's something that's best to tackle over the summer when there's no one in the buildings, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, that real long summer that nothing.
Yeah, it's a
The other
huge.
things that-
It's a huge job.
But we can
Doesn't
certainly
go
put
all
out
the way
testing
around that
stations,
building.
though. We can certainly start testing for it. Maybe that's something you want to look at now. And we can certainly test over the April break when there's nobody there.
Yeah.
I think that might be a good thing just to do right now, and it's relatively inexpensive.
And then the other areas that we've got to address are just safety issues. We have sidewalks. If you know, back in the olden days when we actually went to the boardroom at South School, that walkway going into the South School was dangerous. It's awful. And then if you were there on a rainy
Especially in the
day,
winter.
on a rainy day, you saw the water cascading off that wing. It was, I mean, you can just walk around these buildings day, night, rain, snow, and you can just pick out this list of things that are important. And if we get back into that conference room and we get the public there, I don't want slip and falls. I don't want people to trip their going into there. I think that's an
Yeah,
avoid-
they're all set too low, especially the middle school. The front entrance of the middle school is like a foot lower than it should be. Just ponds there. You drop your kids off. There's no place to park because of the water ponds, and yeah, there's lots of issues.
So what do we do if, Steve, as you guys pull off that siding, it looks expensive?
You put the siding back.
Well, that would be my house. So yes, I understand that, but I think we should do better.
You'd have to phase it. You'd have to do it in phases, because there'd be no way to get it all done at once. And you just got to try to use your common sense and see what's the worst place, what's the biggest impact, and start there. That would be my first thought.
And some of these costs can be handled by our building insurance too. So that's, we need to look at that as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, Gerald, in terms of how you want this night to go, it's 7:09.
9, and we got to look at the budget, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's a good
Whatever
point.
you-
I just say,
Yeah, I think Chelsea might have one more. Anyone else with two
can I
more?
just say, Gerald, can I just say one thing before
Absolutely.
we off that? So what we did with the high school is we actually evaluated the needs in the building before we embarked on the whole project. And I really think we need to do an evaluation on South School and find out what needs to be done, and then attach some numbers to it. I agree that you can do a small section at a time, but at least in my opinion, I would really like to know what we're looking at, long term, rather than just try to piecemeal it. I think that would be wise. That's my 2 cents.
Absolutely. And when you remember what McDougal was like, I mean, we shut that building down because of the mold, and now it's gone. We don't want to have any of our buildings get to that point where the only way to fix it is to destroy them.
And I think John's making a really good point to go back to that second piece of the facilities audit, is that we really do need to know what we're doing with our spaces, because that impacts these CIP plans that Steve is making, CIPs that Steve is making. So Pete, what was the status of putting that in the budget?
Not in the budget.
Okay. Have you been able to, because last we talked about it, you were trying to get numbers. Do you have numbers yet, or still asking people?
I haven't been successful getting somebody to give me their numbers. The only school district that I found was, I think I told you last time, it was a while ago, was South Portland. And the people that are in charge down there now didn't know where to find the actual number, what they paid for.
Because I do continue to think that we really need to be really careful with how we're doing these plans, because we don't want to come back in a couple of years and have to redo things that we've already done. I think siding is less, siding we don't have to worry about as much, but for some of the interior spaces, the decisions that we make actually shape how we do our programming. So I think the programming really needs to be evaluated first. Okay, so I'll ask my other two questions because it doesn't seem like anyone else has anything. Start with this straightforward one, which is the sub question that I asked earlier, and I'll repeat it because I barely remember it. We were talking a little bit about increasing the efficiency and having people who are already on call step in if somebody is out. But it seems to me like our subline is increasing in the facilities and maintenance. So I was wondering if you could talk about what's driving that increase.
Refer to Pete on that one,
Yeah,
because I don't have a lot of subs to call. That's my problem. I mean, we don't have a pool of subs. So.
And again, Pete, I'm not quite clear. It was sort of flipping through, all the sublines seemed high, but I don't have the cross section to really see if that was just incidental to how I was looking at it.
No.
So Chelsea, is it the 265,000, the 265% increase?
Where are you?
I'm on page 10 under subs.
Wait, which budget? Are you on the new budget?
Yeah, I'm on the one I just picked up. Yes, yeah.
Okay, page 10.
Because there is a subline.
Oh yeah, that's exciting.
It's 265%, but it's only $1,100.
No, that's not the one I'm looking at.
Okay.
But that one's exciting. We can hear about that one.
But
as
it's
well.
it's only $1,100.
Well, actually, wait a second. Unfortunately, all my notes are in the old budget.
So the subline is total district subline is $23,000
For the entire district and for the entire budget?
for all custodians and maintenance.
And what was it?
It was 15.5 last year.
Okay, so that is a bit of an increase.
But it's
So
still
what-
only $8,000 though.
It must have been how I calculated. It's a number I throw into the payroll module that's driven by, each individual gets a piece of a sub, whatever, $25 a month I allocate.
So what are we actually spending?
And this is a hard year to tell because subs and overtime, I am generally putting into.
And the
Oh
COVID.
yeah, this year doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How about 2 years ago?
I'm trying to see if I'll see.
Yeah.
But I will. That's one of the and I'll get all the cross sections distributed to everybody.
When?
Well,
I'm looking forward to them.
When I saw I put the email in my folder and I didn't see it till the other day. I'm sorry.
I saw your car in front of the office this weekend, Pete.
Yeah, I know. Not happy about that. Actually, I don't know.
Time of year, right?
I'd rather do it if it was rainy.
But again, even if it's an $8,000 increase, really, I mean,
Well, one of the reasons that it is worth paying attention to is that historically subs have been an issue, and we've been working really hard to reduce those lines. So seeing them creep up, there's a trend line there. And I think that is definitely something that we should be paying attention to. And every $8,000 adds up. You get 10 of those lines, you've got a teacher. Or, I mean, we were cutting half-time ed techs a couple of years ago. So these $8,000, I think those are certainly worth looking at.
So we spent 6,000 this year. We spent a total of 7,000 last year, and we spent 30,000 in fiscal 19. So what we did in 20 was we actually brought in another half-time person to cover sub hours. It was cheaper for part-time without benefits than it was because, you know, paying time and a half. We were out of control from fiscal 19 earlier with time and a half. It was many of our staff felt like they kind of, you know, they struck it rich because we had no other, the way the contract was being interpreted, we had no other way to source our subs than to give it to overtime. So actually it worked better for us to take on extra staff financially to do it that way.
Couldn't
So
agree more with Pete. Now, part-time people really helped us a great deal because my only recourse when people were out was to have others in the buildings or other buildings come in for extra hours, and that fell into overtime. I was able to get a couple of part-time people that wanted, they get, you know, 20 more hours before they even get to overtime. So that worked out great.
The sub costs that we're spending now in custodial are generally for medical issues. So we're paying one person who's out on a long-term sick leave or has some other issues. It's very concentrated in a position or in a building. So without getting any more detail, that's what's causing our stuff. It's not from people just calling out randomly. That's when we have this floater. We have the ability to move people around, but we do have issues that we can't cover that way, either on a long term or even on numerous kind of 3-day, 5-day terms.
Well, so I'm confused. So we've spent $6,000 this year, but we're budgeting 23 next year. Why?
I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay.
I look at subs as a whole district. So because of the way the payroll module works, I run the sub kind of calculation on the entire ESP contract staff. So so when I look at the cross section, when I give it to you, I'm going to give it to you the entire hourly staff sub, and we'll look at that as a whole too.
Right. Well, I do think it's worth breaking it down by department, just because sometimes that brings up things. Okay. Oh, okay. I thought you said the opposite.
So
Sorry.
You'll see it by department, but you also see it all as the entire, bargaining unit as well.
Okay. My last question, I did have some line item questions, but again, I do think that a lot of these line item questions get much better answered through cross sections. So I think what I'm going to do is hold my line item questions till after we've seen cross sections, and then if we need to come back to them, we can. So my last question for you, Steve, you mentioned earlier that, and this is probably a Steve and Pete question, but you mentioned earlier, Steve, that you're moving towards a tiered system for custodians and maintenance parallel to the ed tech. And I'm wondering what the budget implications of that are going to be over the next 3 to 5 years.
There'll be more.
Well,
But not a great deal, right, Pete? I mean, we're not
yeah.
talking a huge increase for somebody that's gonna go from an hourly person to a salary person, nothing like that, but you know, 50 cents an hour more, 75 cents more, maybe even $1 more an hour to be this lead person. I don't see it being that much more. Do you, Pete? I mean, is that kind of with?
No, I think from 1 to 2, you'll see it'll be minimal. And I think those people will be getting more responsibility. When you go from 2 to 3, so that's what I'm kind of considering, those people that are licensed or quasi-licensed, apprenticed. You'll see, a professional pay for them, but that's the savings then will come from the contracted services. So rather than hiring somebody to change our ballast every single time, because that's what the school regulations require, we will have somebody on staff that will do that for us to change our own light bulbs.
And a licensed electrician, the master, they're billing out at $90 an hour now. So it adds up really fast. They're not paying themselves that, but that's what they're charging any of their customers.
We have a very high cost in some of our contracted professionals in this budget, and we always have. They might as well be on staff.
Can we add that to the cross-section request? Thank you. All right, I am going to save my other questions for another day. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. You are free to go if you'd like.
Run away, quick, go.
Good. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Appreciate it. Okay, Pete, you want to lead us through Pete and John want to lead us through the proposed budget? And how's everyone time-wise?
I've been up since 4 in the morning.
I mean, do we want to set a time to wrap this up? No matter, just a time certain.
I'd say I'm good for 8.
8. All right, and then if there are questions that you have, we can just email the committee and Pete and John, so we can all see them. Okay, thank you.
That may shorten this up a little bit, because I'd certainly prefer that, but because the budget itself really didn't change a whole lot. I mean, this really, as John and I have been talking all along, we are really trying to present a status quo budget, with a reasonable tax impact. And this is, this kind of page 1 behind the cover is every single change. This is the same number of staff. This includes step and cost of living increases as contracted or expected to be contracted or estimated in some cases. It includes the knowns that we have so far. It includes the extra money for the Apple lease. It includes the extra money for our insurance costs. It has the reduction of leases that are expiring that we won't have to replace right now, because there may be alternative funding sources. And we just bought 4 new vehicles, or actually we bought 9 new vehicles in the last year, in the last 3 months. It includes about $40,000 in extra main care services. And what that is that when we have students that go to special purpose private schools, not only do we pay an exorbitant rate for those students, those schools also bill main care for services. And we are responsible for the portion of that that's not reimbursed by the federal government. So that's just a part of our special ed tuition costs, and that's been going up again because goes back to the same thing. Is not, in this case, it's not the number. It's the complexity of some of those students. There is at the bottom, we added some modules for PowerSchool to allow us to do some capturing of student and parent information online. Those modules are in there. This year, we paid for those out of the CRF money for the fiscal 21. We may be able to move that back into CRF or into ESSER money for the next couple of years. So we may be able to pull that money out. We won't know that till later on during the budget season when we actually get the application in and approved for the ESSER. So I'm leaving it in there for now. And then we have the contingencies. And so we basically the two things that we did was we added a net about $80,000 to operations. It was $63,000 for transportation last year. We've taken that to zero. We've kind of put that in combination with capital improvements into the capital improvement line. And that's where the $150,000 came from. I rounded down to make my budget number round. That's why it's an odd number. It's all about zeros. I like the budget with zeros because it makes the point that it's an estimate. I think sometimes when you go down to the penny, I see that they're so exact with that. Well, there's so many estimates in here, and we do our best to do those, for me, a conservative way. And then we added a special ed contingency that we used to have in here, and we've basically whittled that down to zero, which is the wrong thing to do. As we know, this could be one student. So it seemed prudent to add that back in to the budget. And with these changes, the other thing that I did do is we originally, if you looked at the original budget, you got the status quo, the benefit line was closer to $400,000, I believe. We didn't get our rates yet from Anthem, but we did get the band. So the band, I think, limits the increase to 4.2%. So I replaced the 8% benefit increase with 4.2, and that's where we freed up a little bit of money for the contingencies.
So at the top where it says expenses, 3.9%, that's the total of all of the increases from the year before. And then the tax implication on the towns.
So the impact on the
very top
is that amount less any additional revenue that town or what the district gets. So the district is receiving $472,000 in additional state aid. And I reduced our tuition estimates by, I think it was 60 some odd $1,000, $64,000, which is 15%, just to be conservative with that number, and because we don't know the number of tuition students we'll get next year, and we never really do. But it's been trending down. So it's actually flattened out. That's the total. So the difference between those two numbers is the decrease in revenue from tuition and the increase in revenue from the state. So about 400 and what's that? 12,000?
4,008 or so. 400,008.
So that's the difference between the expense line and the tax impact line. That's really the budget. I mean, we think that we can do a lot with the ESSER money, the CARES. What do you call it? Was it COVID 4? Is it COVID or CARES?
Well, COVID 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
So with the COVID money, we believe that we can use that to supplement this budget in a way that we can meet all the needs of our students and staff over the next 3 years. It was 2 years, now it's 3 years.
I really like that we're concentrating on purchases that have a much longer impact than just this coming school year. I think that's really great. It's really, really stretching those dollars.
And to also make sure that we are strategic about if we do have an expenditure that we do want to maintain after this money goes away, that we do so in a way that we don't shock the budget in just a single year. That we can, if we decide that, and this is just an example, if an after-school program for all of our K-5 students or all of our K-12 students is important for the district to have as a district, what's that going to cost us in fiscal 25, and how do we get there in a responsible way? So those are things that we have to look at too. That's why I think this is so much more complicated than just saying, let's, I don't mean to pick on the windows, but just buy some windows and replace them at the high school. There's going to be, a lot of, discussions going on. There already has been about how we can do this in a way that we can really strategically make sure that we are, in a place from a technological standpoint that we are able to do what we need to, given any kind of situation. We learned that this year. Transportation, what are the needs for that? The base needs and lunch needs. Steve mentioned the need for custodians and inside people during lunchtime. Well, we have more lunches. We have less students in more lunches, so we need more staff. How do we, we have much more strict guidelines as to when a staff member should or shouldn't be at work, and we enforce that a lot more. So there's going to be more needs for subs. So does it make sense to, hire, short-term positions, 1-year position, 2-year positions for kind of permanent subs, like a lot of districts do around the country? They do it up here. They hire 1 sub for every building for the teaching staff. So I'm not sure it's as easy.
And how does it work? They're sort of on a retainer, and then we pay them more if they work?
It's a 1-year position.
Okay.
They're always in the building.
Okay.
But that was a decision they made, and whether they think it was a good one or not. I think that sometimes when you do that, that person gets all of a sudden, they get given responsibilities and they can't really be that flexible that you thought they would be. But that's the general fund budget is really simple. I mean, it really is last year's budget it really is this year's budget move forward with just the knowns.
Let's ask. So does anyone have any sort of big general questions?
Yeah.
Before people get into the weeds?
Yeah, I do. So does this budget include the development public information person we talked about?
It does not.
Does this budget include what we need to spend on the after-school program this year?
It does not, because again, a lot of these things, because of how the legislation was written, may be covered by the COVID money. For example, the after-school program, which is also a federal program, the way we run it, like Title I programs or LE programs, those are covered. Those types of projects are covered. So the bigger decision, the bigger discussion that we're having is, what do we want the after-school program to look like, and how do we use different funding streams to do that? We know we're going to have a $70,000 shortfall or a reduction in our 21st century funding, and we will again next year. So how do we make sure that we put together a program and then fund it in a way that again makes sense, so we can maintain that in the long term?
Yeah, it's a $300,000 a year program. So yeah, we do go down in years 4 and 5. But I think we can reapply after the 5th year. I mean, the guy from the state said we can reapply for that grant again. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that is sort of part of my long-term thinking is how do we keep it going and how do we afford it? And can we, for instance, can we reapply to the 21st century?
So I want to jump in here and just say one thing. So we've got an opportunity here, and the opportunity is to hold down expenditures on the general fund budget, basically roll out a status quo budget with some contingencies put in, which I think are very needed, particularly in special education. We need to do that. But the opportunity is that we can develop over the 4 years with these COVID funds in a very smart, strategic way and end up in a really good place. So it gives us some planning time and some time to build capacity and look at where we really want to end up at the end of all this. So we don't shock the public, we don't shock the taxpayer with a big increase in the general fund budget, but we can do some really, really good things for the district. So that's the philosophy behind doing it this way.
Yeah, well, I totally endorse it. Yeah, I love to hear that. I love to hear that that's what you're thinking and planning, because it's a great use of what we have here in our state and district funding, and then what we have coming in federal funding that's spendable, I guess, for the next 3 years. So 3 or 4. Great.
Pete, I want you to walk me through this again. You already said it, but I didn't get it. So from the status quo, the expenses have gone up from 3.69 to 3.9, but the tax impact has gone up a full percentage. And the benefits dropped by 200,000. So I'm not sure how we got another $70,000 increase. And again, I haven't had a chance to look through these numbers, so it may make more sense. But if you can just give me that kind of high level. One question is sort of what are the changes from the status quo? That's about a $270,000 shift. And then why is the tax impact up by a percentage point?
So the easiest question to answer is the tax impact on the original one was wrong. Because what I did, well, first of all, it didn't include it didn't include the tuition reduction. That's new in this one. So I think let's say it was, let's say the overall tax impact dollar-wise was $800,000. So I divided that into the whole budget, $32 million, to get the tax impact. Well, out of $32 million, 6 is paid for this. We don't pay for all of that. The local taxpayer portion is only 26 million. So I used the wrong denominator. And so that's where the tax impact was wrong. But this is based on the actual this current year's local tax assessments, and that's the reason for that. And the other changes, I think,
I have a question.
The changes are primarily in contingency.
But some of those were already in the status quo.
Somewhere I moved them around. I got to see if it is.
Yeah, that's I can't quite figure that out.
I had $500,000 and now it's 400, but there's 100,000 less in contingency. Actually, I don't think, was there any contingencies in the in the original status quo budget? I don't think there was. In the budget booklet.
Oh, I was looking at, what you have on this page,
Yeah,
in the new budget, and it does list them, but I think you're right. That explains why the numbers are different.
Didn't. I must have added that column later on when I did a
And just
version.
carried it over.
When I did a version 2. There was a middle status quo. Don't tell Tom that.
Oh, that makes sense, because there were actually another 3 lines that didn't quite add up, but I wasn't going to mention them.
Sorry, that's what it is.
Okay, thanks.
Quick question on Siemens. Just what does that mean? The difference? We have a cost, we dropped a cost, so that's just, is that a switch over?
So there's 2 lines for Siemens. One is the increase in their annual maintenance contract that we have. I think this is a year that we bump it up. I think then we're even for a couple of years. We did like an every other year increase with them. We contracted that. The decrease was something called M&V, a measurement and verification contract. That was part of the performance contract where we actually paid them to measure and verify that we were saving all the money that they said we were saving. And considering that we are using our facilities in a way that has never been even thought through by this project, there's no to try to measure the savings based on us running these things wide open 24/7 makes no sense. So we knew from the first 3 reports that we were on par and saving a lot more than they estimated, which I'm sure they lowballed anyway to make it look good. But it didn't make any sense to continue this $20,000 a year contract that kept going up and up and up. We had actually negotiated it down from almost $30,000 to $20,000 2 years ago. And then we finally, it just made no sense to do it anymore. It wasn't giving us any information.
Would you say about the 24-hour thing, like for ventilation purposes, are we running things 24 hours instead of like a normal school year where we don't? Is that what you mean?
So normally the ventilation system runs off of carbon monoxide levels. So it measures the load on the system and ventilates enough to clear the air. I think if I'm saying it wrong, you can tell me, Cheryl, but when this struck, we just instructed them to turn everything on. And so the guidance from the CDC.
With COVID, you mean COVID and yeah.
COVID.
Okay.
So we're bringing in all fresh air, warm or cold. It's got
all the time. Yeah. Okay. Good. I mean, it's just good to know that. I mean, we spent a boatload of money to make that happen, and I'm very happy that we did. And it's really sort of cool to realize that we can make that kind of change for safety purposes. And then when it's cleared, we can go back to normal operating procedure and so forth. So,
yeah, it's unfortunate that we were never really able to measure if there was any increase in student performance because of the reduced carbon monoxide levels. But
yeah.
Oh well. If you would entertain this, I'll ask what Doug wanted to his concerns. He's concerned about the increase in the business office line and what he describes as the large increase at the middle school administration.
So Doug didn't look at the most recent budget where the business office actually was reduced by where it was by actually moving people's responsibilities down. I mean, the big increase in the business office was going from 2 hourly staff members to 2 salaried staff members. And that's because of the caliber I brought in. And that was kind of in the whole kind of idea of eliminating one position over in facilities and transportation, and allowing Jen to move on and work with me on a more administrative level, as well as working with those directors. I needed to have 2 kind of what I think high caliber people in HR and in the it's accounts payable, receivable, it's grants, it's with the scholarship funds that she maintains. It's maintaining student activity accounts. So I needed somebody more than just a payables clerk in that position. And then replacing Barbara was going to be expensive no matter what. I mean, that's a $75,000 a year position in most districts when you have an HR director.
How much of an increase was that, and what's the total, the actual budget for your office?
I think the total budget,
Ballparky. So I have to maintain the cat door. Excuse
the
me.
increase was 8.
I've got the numbers in front of me if you want.
So it's a $46,000 increase, 11.7%, 11 and change percent.
And then I had one question. So I'm sorry, Jessica. And you're not banking the sale of our current Apple fleet, right?
I'm not.
Good.
And we're looking at an estimated like 380,000 or something,
At today's
more or
price,
less. If we're lucky.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, Jessica. Go ahead, please.
So I guess the final piece from my perspective, that's, the most important is the tax impact by town. As we know that, the revenue doesn't just flow to the RSU, the revenue from the subsidy especially flows to each individual town's required local. So it impacts different towns differently. We have in terms of the tax impact of this budget, this proposed budget on each town, Thomaston will see the lowest increase at just under 1% at 0.8. Cushing 2%. Rockland 3.3%. South Thomaston 4.1%. And Owl's Head, Susan, cover your ears, 6.8%. And that's really because Owl's Head now is the only town that does not get any subsidy. Owl's Head has also had the highest relative increase in property values out of the 5 towns. And Owl's Head has seen the highest relative increase of students in that town. All 3 things, I think, make this town much stronger. I think it's really a reflection on the incredible place to live and families moving in there. But those students cost money.
Is that similar, because South Thomaston is, it's not quite as high as Owl's Head, but it is up there. Is it similar reasons?
Yeah, South Thomaston, for the first time last year, got subsidy. And so they didn't really see it like Rockland gets the full effect of changes in subsidy, because they've always had their mill rate has been kind of, they've always been able to they get the full effect of the subsidy increase to the whole state and to their town, whereas South Thomaston didn't see that because they only got a partial subsidy last year. They barely got the subsidy last year. So when the subsidy increases, and primarily it increases because of special ed, the towns that were fully subsidized saw the full effect of that, but the towns like South Thomaston that were just kind of on the border didn't. And I think South Thomaston and, well, that's why Cushing's a little higher too.
Pete, I see what Doug's question is. I'm looking at the middle school, and you've got a benefit line that went from $1,700 and change to $19,540. So it's 1,000% increase. So there's got to be a simple explanation for that, but I'm certain.
Cash in lieu to benefits.
Got it. So it was just a change in benefit package for that person,
Or the person, or the open position is what that is. So open positions, I budget at a certain level of benefits. I don't ever budget cash in lieu. So if the actual person got cash in lieu and the and the replacement got full benefits. That would be the difference.
Yeah, so it's an assumption for the open position that they might not choose cash in lieu. So that's the explanation for that.
Exactly.
Can I ask a question about Rockland Evaluations? So it seems like our property values are certainly increasing, but I know that that gets redistributed around the town. So is Rockland, how is that going to impact our state aid? That's kind of the question. Is there anything in the fact that we have a really hot market right now that might negatively impact our state aid in future years?
Yes. So if valuation goes up, then I mean, if relative valuation goes up to the rest, the rest of the market. So if valuation goes up statewide, then no, it should be fine. But if the relative valuation increases more than other areas, then it will go down.
And when would we know that information?
We could probably figure it out now, because if you go to the if you search for main valuation, you'll get the 2021 list, I believe, already. And I think that we are using, in my calculation, I think we're using 2019 and 18, those 3 years is what we do. And that's what, and the state will use that. They temper it with 3 years. So it won't be all at once.
So would this year include that, or we're still, because we just did that recent reevaluation. So I'm wondering if there's any impact there.
I don't know. I know it's more than just what the valuation that the city sends to the state. They do some do some verification and measurements on that. I think very poorly, but they do say they do that.
I guess part of the reason I'm asking this question is it looks like the state share decreased. But I'm not sure if that's related to valuations or related to budget.
The state share.
Yeah, I'm just looking at like the two. Well, that doesn't help. Okay, the two boxes in the middle. So you've got the fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2021 with subsidy and the state share. And I noticed that, I mean, it's a really small drop, but it is a drop. So it's 15.91%, and now it's 15.72%. So I'm wondering.
I think if you look at the next page, page 1 of 2, you'll see that the state subsidy actually increased by 8.56% overall. So it increased by $472,000.
Right. Well, so I guess that's where, so that's the percentage. So that's not like we're actually, that percentage doesn't actually reflect.
Not per town.
How we pay it. Okay.
My guess is that their calculation, which uses the required local. So that's basically required local, that the required local went up more than the subsidy went up.
And that's on the state end. That's not something that
On
we.
the state end only.
Okay.
And it did go up because of the way they calculated the formula this year a little differently, with a lower teacher-student ratio because of COVID, and then ours is with the special ed increase. I mean, I got to say that for other districts around us, and even throughout the state, we We did pretty good with subsidy this year
Good.
relative to other districts. I think that's because we didn't, our student counts didn't drop as drastically as others did.
And then just a simple yes or no question. Do you envision any change to the EPS formula coming up from our legislature?
No.
Okay.
Well, they may tweak the formula, but it's the it's the distribution side of it that would actually impact us.
It's the ability to pay side.
Yeah, I think they may change the formula itself, but that's just to appease certain groups. They always do that.
Any other general questions for Pete or anyone want to go into a weedy issue?
I just want to say, as always, Pete, thank you. This is a tough time of year for you. You put in a lot of extra hours. We appreciate every second that you do. Thank you.
You didn't hear my wife yelling out there?
I didn't. No, I chose to ignore.
I heard something out there. I didn't dare look around.
That's funny.
Yes, regarding the business office, I think Doug looked at the 11.7 increase that's here. It's for $46,000.
It's the staff. It's the changes that I made. Last year we didn't have them full year, so I was able to kind of keep it lower.
Yeah, I'd actually tabbed it too. So, why is there a decrease in student transportation?
We moved the contingency out of there.
Anyone else with the? Oh, we got 3 more minutes.
I haven't had
John?
enough time. I didn't get this info in time to really look at it. So I'm sure I do have some questions, but I need to think about them because otherwise some of them I probably had it asked
I
before.
gave you half a Sunday and all day Monday.
No, I didn't get it till Monday.
No, it was Sunday. I sent it.
It didn't arrive until Monday.
Oh God.
Yeah, blame the post office for that.
Yeah.
Just what I would say is if anything that comes up, if you want to get answered, just email us.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on that. So in order to be sort of, well, not to be sort of transparent, but open to the public, should we create a Google Doc for this that the public can access, or how, I mean?
I'll post it on the website.
Okay, perfect.
And I also, there's a list of cross sections that Chelsea's asked for that I'll send to everybody.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you.
Lane?
Everyone okay with that?
Lane?
How do we get a print copy of this?
There are a number of copies in the business office, and there's at least 1 or 2 copies down in the superintendent's office.
If you go up the front steps, just make a right and see Jen, and there's a stack right there on her deal counter.
Okay, thanks.
So I want to remind you all that the next 2 Tuesdays, we have our open meetings with the program directors and principals and open to the public. And then the Thursday after the second Tuesday is our workshop where John and Pete will present the entire COVID funding package and plan. And then Pete and Gerald, I'm forgetting, do we have any meeting of this committee before the full board votes on the budget at the May business meeting? Are we all set?
We would
Unless,
always-
I mean, unless there's something we need to address from the public comments, I don't see a need to.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Can I ask a couple questions? So the public comment, if you go by what happened in Camden, there was only 1 person that showed up. So is like an hour block of time that people have to show up? I mean, so it starts at 6 and ends at 7?
How are we advertising? Because that impacts how many people show up.
Yeah. I'm assuming we'll be open basically from 6 to 8. And we'll hear from principals and program managers for a while, maybe half the time.
Oh, so there's going to be a presentation part of this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then we'll just be open to questions from the public, from the board, whoever, right? And we'll finish when we'll finish.
And so after the presentations, we'll just wait for a comment. So that's a, so you could fire up your bridge programmer or whatever.
We're gonna wait some amount of time, and I'll just have to make a judgment call on that.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, it's like a bus schedule. You don't want the bus to leave early because so as long as the public understands that it's going to be open from whatever to whatever.
Yeah.
And whether we do one in earlier, like from 4 to 6 or 6 to 8, it's to give a little more flexibility. I just want to make sure that the format is set so that people know.
It is set.
Okay.
It is set from 6 to 8. I'm a working guy. I got to do my job first and then break out for this. So, yep, 6 to 8.
Chelsea?
If we're not going to have another meeting, so if our next meeting as a committee is going to be a budget presentation, can we make sure that we get the documents in enough time to review them? Because I don't feel like I've had enough time, which I guess was because I didn't check my email as frequently as I should have. But I feel like if we're only going to have one more meeting, I want to make sure that I have a chance to think through questions in advance. So can we make sure we get a full weekend with the documents?
Is that presentation to this committee or to the board? I thought
Board.
it was
We
to
don't
the,
have another meeting. So it has to be this committee.
John, what are you doing? Are you presenting it to the board this Thursday, right?
This is going to the board for their initial look this Thursday.
okay.
Right.
Which I have here
Right.
from 1
So-
April. Okay.
So, right. So that happens Thursday. The next 2 Tuesdays, it's that thing with principals and program managers and open to the public.
The 6th and the 13th.
Correct.
Yeah. And then the 15th, we talk about COVID 134 funding plans.
Board workshop.
Yep. And then we'll meet again if we have to.
The
But
committee
before
or
we
the,
need to,
So
we're not meeting during the vacation at all.
Wait, I thought
then
we
we-
canceled our April board workshop.
No, because the workshop is the third Thursday before the vacation. And when John and I were talking about how to do this, John made the point, like you said tonight, we need to look at our budget now and deal with it this way. And then the separate COVID budget, separate night, separate consideration. And then we have the week off and then we come back. And if we need to meet as a committee, Gerald, you figure that out. Before the next business meeting of the board where we approve the budget, then we should meet. But if we seem to be all, clear on what we're doing, no major changes. I mean, this budget tonight is like literally no major changes going on here.
so the first
So-
Thursday in May, the regular board meeting is when we'll vote on the budget to send
Correct.
to the voters.
Correct. For the May public meeting of a different nature because it's still quarantine.
Right. And then one other clarification about these public participations. Who's speaking from our side of it? Who's going to address any questions?
Well, I'll just funnel them to Pete, John, whomever, it's my job to make sure that questions go to the right
All
person.
right, so for board members, we should let John and Pete answer the questions.
Well,
or committee members.
Yeah, I mean, if you have knowledge and or thumb to add, of course, you add that, but basically it'll be Pete answering questions with John's assistance and or vice versa. So yeah,
But these will be, the full board will be at both these public presentations.
that is my my message to everybody last time we met to be there. And
We
obviously
do the
some
whole
people,
roll call and everything. We sort of have to, don't we?
No,
John, Lena, yeah.
It's not a regular meeting.
it's not a regular meeting.
I have to take attendance and just make sure I know who's in the meeting. So
Okay.
we don't have to have a roll call. We don't have to have a quorum of the board.
Right.
Because no votes will be taken.
Cool. Anything else?
But I do think we are going to meet on my calendar on May 4th. Which
That's
is a regular finance meeting to go over financials, if nothing else.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And then we have the actual virtual, the public hearing by statute is on my calendar on May 20th.
2 weeks after the board meeting.
Correct.
Wait, so we are still doing that?
We have to, that's by statute. The two that we're doing in April are not required. We thought it would be a good way of doing this, kind of letting the public have a voice before the board votes on it. Because really after the board votes on it on the 6th, that's the budget that goes to the voters in referendum form. So on the 6th, you'll be signing warrants as well with the articles.
So we're not doing that virtually.
Hey, how are we going to do that? Go to the office?
We could do it. We did it last year. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I think
what are we-
everybody in this window is going to be vaccinated by then. I wouldn't worry, but we'll see.
No,
I
it's
got my
later.
first jab on Saturday. Lane,
No,
did you-
that is not a valid assumption.
Yes.
I think you'll be surprised. I really do.
No, no.
Elaine, did you have a comment?
No, I just have to go, but
Okay.
thanks.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Lane. Go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What are we doing May 20th?
That's the public hearing on the budget.
In person, like we normally do.
No.
No,
Because we can't all meet at the high school. Yeah.
Virtual.
that's right.
Okay, so it's a virtual budget hearing. Okay, so people are not actually going to be voting on things the way they normally do.
No, we'll go over the budget and we'll do it by article. So we'll go over the warrant. So there'll be a warrant to call a meeting. There'll be a warrant to call the referendum. That'll have each article listed with the amounts, and that's what the voters will vote on. So we'll go over that document in the budget in that format for that night.
But
So
we
it's
won't
informative.
have anyone standing up saying, I want to reduce Article 3 by $300,000.
It's the board budget.
Everyone holds up their colored paper.
And will there be public comment at that, or is it just presentation?
Comment. It's a hearing.
All of our head will be there.
I bet.
You guys got that new school now. Come on.
I know, that's what attracting everybody in this building going, what did you say it was, Pete? 6.3 or 6.8?
What's the increase?
Yeah.
What do you want to hear?
I'm wanting to-
3.8.
It was 6.8, unfortunately.
Talk to
That's
Thomas.
what- yeah.
Talk to Thomas, and they might split a little bit. They might give you a little bit.
No, they won't. No. Okay.
Susan, it's right here on this colored page at the
Yes.
very end. I have to get my magnifying glass out to read it.
It's really, really small.
It's really, really small. That's Al's head for you. We're really, really small. Not.
All right, well, thanks, everybody.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your
It was
time.
great.